This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to this edition of Behind the Headlines by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. My name is Jere Strittmatter, a board member, and had the honor of hosting today's show because of Maura and Charlie being on assignment. So I hope they're having fun on assignment, but luckily we have an expert here, Charles McElwee, who is going to tell us all about elections, since he's with Real Clear, Pennsylvania, and it's going to be a fun segment. Charles, welcome. And what would you say happened in the election that happened in November?
The November election was a disaster, Jerry, for the Republican Party in Pennsylvania. It's indisputable. There's no way to have any other takeaway when you look at the statewide map. There were exceptions, but for the most part, when you look at just county-level results, Dauphin County, which has been trending Democrat since 2008, the county commissioners went Republican. Monroe County went Democrat. Monroe County went Democrat. Sarah Innamorato won the Allegheny County executive race in western Pennsylvania. That's the most powerful elected position west of the Susquehanna River, more important than the mayor of Pittsburgh. Across the board, whether in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, or across the state, the Democrat play of abortion being on the ballot prevailed. And they nationalized the issue in hyper-local races and was an effective strategy for the 23 cycle. Now the question is, of course, will that endure? Will that work moving ahead? But all indications are that it remains a salient issue when you look not just in Pennsylvania, but the fact that abortion was codified by voters in Ohio, that Virginia Republicans got crushed, New Jersey Republicans got crushed. It's an off-year election, but it's a consequential one. And although turnout was only about 30% among registered voters, it shows where the sentiments are on certain issues and the messaging struggles that Republicans have going into 24.
Well, another factor, and I ask you, you're the expert with this, but when a lot of people are doing the mail-in ballots now, all across America, but especially in Pennsylvania, with having the speakership in Congress, and having the Republicans do that for 3 weeks, right when they were filling out their mail-in ballots, did that have a big effect as well?
Absolutely. Republicans remain far behind when it comes to the mail-in ballot game. Democrats have the upper hand. They have an effective strategy that has been in place since 2020 when mail-ins really came into law. So it's a real challenge for the party, and it remains so. It's really a crisis of political behavior. Republicans are not inclined to submit mail-in ballots. They view it as an issue of election integrity, and the challenge for Republican Party officials, they realize that no, mail-ins are here to stay and they're essential for winning elections, especially those razor-thin elections. So that will remain an issue for the party going into 24.
Yeah, just like when Facebook paid $450 million to have people get out the vote and whatever, in selected places. Republicans never sort of adopted that feeling when they tried to raise $450 million to go and
right,
and
or ballot
do
harvesting, any of that. Yeah, absolutely. They do not.
You're not allowed to harvest, but you're allowed to, get people gathered together and whatever.
Exactly.
That was brand new or was looked on as not kosher, many years ago, and then now it seems to be okay.
It's fair game.
That you can, develop these friendships with people and then make sure that they get a mail-in ballot every election.
Right. Yeah. So when it comes to suburban areas, Democrats have their ground game, they have their grassroots efforts, and it is proving to be an effective strategy right now.
Now, what's going to happen, what do you see from happening in the November election that's now, going forward into 2024?
Well, the big race next year will be the Senate race between Republican Dave McCormick against Bob Casey, who has been in office as a Democratic incumbent in the Senate since 2006. He has held statewide elected office in Pennsylvania for 27 years. So all indications are that this could be the most competitive race that Casey has had. More so, of course, in 22 when, or I'm sorry, a few years ago when he defeated Barletta in 18. McCormick narrowly lost to Oz, of course, in the 22 cycle in the primary. But when you look at the statewide map, it's settled. So northeastern Pennsylvania is trending Republican. Western Pennsylvania trending Republican with the exception of Allegheny County. South central Pennsylvania, purple, and then the Philadelphia suburbs going blue. I mean, they're assuredly blue at this point. There's no turning back. Bucks County kept their commissioners in the November election. They swept the suburbs. So when you look at the settled map, where are the competitive votes for the Republican Party? And it really seems to be those purple areas where, like, I would call the battle for the three valleys. So you have the Cumberland Valley, the Lebanon Valley, and the Lehigh Valley. And those areas remained either purple or red. And how can Republicans perform in statewide elections next year with, let's put the scenario of Trump versus Biden, McCormick versus Casey, if that's the race going into November 24, where can Republicans target regions to improve their margins, because all indications are that suburban Philadelphia is gone. I mean, so and those three, that area could be an opportunity for the party.
All right. And with the name ID, that you were talking about, with Senator Casey, I mean, that goes back with his father. And actually there is that joke about, is he the real Bob Casey or not? Because there was a Bob Casey from Johnstown that won as our state treasurer just because of the name Casey. So it is, as you point out, it's a very strong trend to try to, for someone to try to beat, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, and the irony that the father was so stridently opposed to abortion, but at this point, that all the national trends show that it's becoming a settled issue, that even among voters in Pennsylvania, polling has consistently shown that most Pennsylvanians trend toward abortion rights, and that's a challenge for the party, for the Republican Party, going in.
Oh yeah, they definitely have to speak about life.
Right.
And the fact that the barbarous acts that go when you have abortion right up to and after birth, that's what's wrong, and that's what President Trump was able to do. Was to talk about it, in a different way, and talk about life and about bad procedures and putting restrictions on bad procedures that most people, go along with. But if you just say abortion and about a woman's right, then you're losing. You need to
right.
talk differently about it.
Or even legislating about it at this point. I mean, Carluccio, the judicial candidate for state Supreme Court, she was the perfect candidate for the party, a moderate Republican who was chosen by both parties to be the president judge of Montgomery County, a blue county. You couldn't find a better candidate on the Republican side to go up against McCaffrey. But nevertheless, she lost because Democrats have effectively made that the premier issue. Can that hold with Biden's polling numbers and the economy and the state of affairs independent of that? Will that wear down going forward? It remains to be seen. But
a successful Democrat candidate, ran his ads, saying Planned Parenthood and the teachers union and the other unions, and so you're absolutely right on. So I'm glad our viewers are getting to hear all about this now.
Right.
Now for the side for Dave McCormick, who's quite accomplished. His father was the chancellor of our state system of higher education. I remember working with him years ago, and then Dave went on to become an outstanding wrestler at Bloomsburg and area high schools, and then went to West Point and co-captain of the wrestling team, as well as an all-around good person that way, being at West Point and being a Ranger. And so do you see that he has some other benefits starting off against Senator Casey?
He has benefits if he really points to the problems in Pennsylvania rather than opportunities. I think what helped Fetterman in the 22 cycle was that he went into those working class regions and improved his margins in areas that were trending Republican because he didn't. The reality is that negativity often sells, and the negativity in this case is not imagined. The fact that the economy is abysmal, inflation is soaring, and families of all brackets are actually struggling right now. So how can McCormick go across the state and talk about those issues in a compelling and relatable way that makes voters question what has Casey done in his 27 years in office, with the Senate being his office since '06, and that is his opportunity. Now, Casey has tried to be a hawk on China, and that has been the case since about the Obama years. Can McCormick somehow outplay Casey on those issues?
About bringing jobs back.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, exactly. Now, when you look at in 2024 with all the other races with control of the Senate, control of the House, the presidential, how is that going to be affecting Pennsylvania?
The presidential, yeah, well, a recent New York Times poll had Trump ahead of Biden by 4 points in the state. And that's what's so interesting, that you have the 22 and 23 cycles were quite punishing for the Republican Party. But nevertheless, there's this enduring enthusiasm for Trump across the state, whether it's vocalized or even silent. Could those polling numbers be off? Of course. I mean, polls have been quite off in recent years, so it's really hard to predict, especially in a state where suburbia does have an aversion to Trump. But it's a reminder, too, Trump knew in the 16 cycle how to handle those polarizing cultural issues. We just saw how the Republican Party's messaging played out in 23, whether it was losing all those school board races, most notably the Central Bucks one, losing local offices, losing the judicial races. Clearly, the messaging is not working, and would they be better off recalibrating to where Trump was in 16, where he was center-right on the issues, but he didn't talk about it. Ironically, as polarizing as Trump may be to people, did not talk about abortion in a necessarily polarizing way. He's actually still that way. But the fact that we were coming off a year of DeSantis proposing a 6-week ban, the Pennsylvania legislature coming up with a strident measure last summer, 22, Democrats pounced on that, played it, and it was a loser for the GOP.
In the closing seconds that we have, let our viewers know, because I know you've really piqued their interest, how they can get in touch with you.
So visit realclearpennsylvania.com. We have daily curation of the top news articles, op-eds of the day in Pennsylvania. I'm also a regular contributor at City Journal, and I write for Politico, where I'm talking about the Pennsylvania political trends.
Thank you, Charles, for being here, and we look forward to seeing all our viewers after these messages.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Welcome back to Behind the Headlines. In this segment, we're blessed to have Bob Latham, who is the expert in highway and transportation in general for our Commonwealth. And Bob is the Executive Vice President of APC, the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. And Bob, why don't you start off by letting us know all these success stories that we have with the highways now. I think that we're all feeling a lot better knowing that our roads are going to be safer. Can you give us some of the details of that?
Jerry, pleasure to be with you today. We're making great strides with our roads and bridges in Pennsylvania, going back to the leadership we had from many of our legislative leaders 10 years ago by passing a state highway and transportation funding bill that allowed us to get our inventory, if you will, of bad bridges down from about 6,000 down to 2,000. So we're making great strides in safety, bridge safety, also roadway improvements as well. A couple of years ago, Congress passed a massive transportation bill known as the bipartisan infrastructure law. That's had some great impacts on what we're able to do as well. And then moving forward, back to Harrisburg, back to Pennsylvania. In this year, we've talked about this for years. We've had a problem where we budgeted money coming from the money that people pay in their gas taxes that they think are going to be fixing roads is going into the general fund to pay for the Pennsylvania State Police.
Right.
Well, we've been able to convince the legislature to whittle that down. We appreciate the leadership of Governor Shapiro and the legislative leaders on both sides of the Capitol building. We're now, in this year's budget, all the way down to $375 million.
Which is very important because in order to get a federal match, you need all those dollars. And so even though people talk about, oh, we're spending all this money on transportation, only if you have the money to match that, which is at 20%, many times.
Exactly.
And so if you don't have that, if you're going to do a major bridge project or something like that, a lot of times, other states are going to get our money, because we can't do that. So it is really important that they get it down to zero, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, you said 375, but we need to get that into this budget and into this fiscal code. Isn't that correct?
Correct, and it is the first thing we need to emphasize is this is not a cut in public safety or in the budget of the state police. So what we did was...
And it's dedicated, right?
Right.
For the state police now for the first time, rather than having to go and try to steal money from other
there is
uses.
a public safety account now in the general fund that is making up for that. And now we're putting money, like you said, back into the motor license fund, or keeping it there, I guess, if you will, the money that motorists pay for road improvements. We've received assurances, and again, we want to appreciate the leadership of the administration, the Shapiro administration, as well as legislative leaders, to assure us that this is going to continue to step down, like you said, to zero in budgetary and other code bills as well.
Right, like unlike other places around the nation, Pennsylvania has worked, Republicans and Democrats, for keeping our roads safe. When the kids go off into the school bus in the morning, we want to make sure they get back safely. So that's one thing that nobody's really bouncing around with, except now this funding mess up with the state police being taken care of. That's super. Right. On another issue, workplace safety. And I know we were following Maryland's lead, and we got that in there to make sure in work zones that people would know how dangerous it is to the workers, and not only workers, but even the drivers themselves, because those accidents within that, you're not going off into the berm someplace, you're going into concrete barriers. And so tell us how that's working out, and has it been agreed to that we're going to get rid of the sunset and continue that?
We are continuing to work on getting rid of the sunset, let's put it that way. And again, step back a little bit. This is a system that allows for what we call automated speed enforcement. We're trying to get people to slow down in highway work zones for, and most of the crashes and fatalities in work zones are with the motorists themselves. We, of course, in the construction industry are concerned with motorists, but we don't like to see them get hurt either. But we're mostly worried about the people working for us, and so we're hoping to get those speeds down. We've seen an uptick in lawless driving for some reason ever since the pandemic, but by and large, those systems do work. You do see people reducing speeds, and we're hopeful to get that reauthorized. There's a number of other what we call camera bills, I guess, if you will, that are floating around, and some of that's got to be sorted out. But there is generally an agreement on that going forward.
That's good.
And we've seen,
it is important.
and when we passed it, there was only Maryland, Pennsylvania, and one other state, I think it was Indiana, that had it. And now you've seen about a half a dozen other states follow our lead. So it is gaining in popularity across the country.
Yeah, it's smart because, and the reason it's all speeding up because there weren't people on the road for a couple of years. So those people who used to going 90 miles an hour, well, now they don't like
Right.
driving with people who obey the speed limit.
Well, and we all of our work, almost all the work that's done on our roads now is under traffic. We don't build new roads anymore. We rehabilitate those that are existing and need to be fixed. You think about our interstate highway system was first built about 50 years ago. Well, that's getting towards the end of its useful life, and all of this needs to be replaced. Pennsylvania is very unique in its geography and geology and climate. We're a freeze-thaw state. We've got a lot of rivers, so we've got a lot of bridges, and that plays havoc on concrete and steel. So we have to continue to upgrade our existing facilities, and again, that's done under traffic. We need people to slow down in highway work zones, at least down to that reasonable speed, about 55 miles an hour. Can get through very very safely, but. And we believe the camera system will work. Can't have a policeman at every highway work zone. We have about 700 of them around the state.
And the idea is that the Commonwealth isn't doing it as a money raiser. They're doing it as a safety issue. You're not going to raise that much money on the fines, but hopefully it gets people to drive more safely.
Right. Our hope is would be zero fines, and there would be no speeding violations going through. That is actually the ultimate goal.
Well, since we talk so much about funding today.
Right.
How about the funding that's not being paid by those people that have electric vehicles? Because that's another issue that our highways and bridges could be even safer if they were contributing like they should, because it's the same amount of pounds that are hurting the bridges that you were just talking about, being 50 years old or more. And have you been successful talking to the legislature and the governor's office about implementing?
For some reason, there seems to be reticence to move forward with that. We're seeing a lot of, we're seeing a push for electric vehicles. We see funding now for charging stations. Some of the gas stations have gotten grants to put in charging stations around. There's a big push for that market, but right now they're not paying their fair share, in my estimation, of road use. Whether you have a gas-powered vehicle or an electric-powered vehicle, you're still using the same roads.
Are there some states or your association, sort of on top of all these transportation matters, are there some that have shown how much isn't being paid and how much should be in Pennsylvania?
Well, generally a motorist who drives a gas-powered vehicle pays about $250 a year in gas taxes, so many miles, 15,000 miles, how many miles a gallon, et cetera, et cetera. So that's about the average of what people are paying. I think there are probably about 20 to 25 states around the country who have implemented a electric vehicle fee. They range anywhere from $150 to $200 and some dollars a year. And I don't know that we're advocating starting at a high level at this point, but I think it's time we implement something. And we would like to see that start to move. It just doesn't seem to be getting any traction right now in the state legislature. We're not seeing a push from the
legislators. Never want to pass taxes. That's the last thing you want to do.
Right, but the point is, as we're seeing more and more electric vehicles come online, as we're seeing more fuel efficiency from gas-powered cars, you're seeing a drop in revenue for road improvements, and we have to start to find other solutions. And this is a fairness issue as well.
Okay, well, all our viewers can, be prepared for that, but you're going to have safer roads and bridges,
Right.
all along. Now, are there other things in transportation besides all these funding issues that you want to brag about? Because I know everything seems to be going so much smoother. This last year, was there a lot of concrete and asphalt and restoration done?
Well, one of the things
compared
that
to the others here?
one of the things I will congratulate PennDOT on is some states were not able to spend all of their federal money, and as a result, we were positioned in order to capture that money. So we will see several $100 million in future years that weren't necessarily programmed, that will be able to be programmed back in. So by fiscal prudency and by being prepared, they were able to take advantage of that. So we're going to be able to see even more improvements as a result of their good management over at PennDOT. So we're very proud of that, to be partners with them on that.
Oh, good. Congratulations. And you mentioned it before about us being the Keystone State, and the fact that everybody, if you're going any place, in the eastern part of America, you're coming through Pennsylvania.
Well, our freight, obviously, freight coming through Pennsylvania continues to increase. We have, and the other thing you'll see, anybody that's observant will notice if you're on an interstate highway, what used to be farmland is now a distribution center. We're in a distribution economy. Some states are starting to look at the stress that all of those deliveries are putting on the highway system, and looking at that as a potential source for making up gas tax revenue, I guess, if you will. Colorado and a couple of other states have implemented a reasonable package fee, package delivery fee to help fund transportation. It's sort of like some of the fees you pay for your phone or your utility for stranded costs of the utility and that sort of thing. So that's an idea that's starting to catch on. Nobody likes to pay additional fees and nobody likes to pay for additional taxes, but we're going to have to get creative going forward. The era of the gas tax covering everything in transportation is pretty much over, so we're going to have to find new and innovative ways to fund our transportation system. People are still going to want to get around, and we're still going to want to move goods and services and have things delivered to our house.
Well, thank you very much, and please thank APC for allowing you to be our transportation expert and help our viewers with all this great information. So appreciate that, and we look forward to seeing you soon, and we look forward to seeing you soon next week in another show of Behind the Headlines.